finished my previous video with the limitations of VLOOKUP formula. One of them I mentioned was the fact that VLOOKUP will only pick up the first value it can find within the table, in this case Croatia. Now if I think about it, I'm not sure if we can really call it a limitation. If I asked you what is the value of Croatia in this table, the obvious question would be which Croatia? Do you want the value for the first or the second one? One way I could ask a question that only has one answer would be how many times does Croatia appear in this table? And this is exactly what COUNTIF does. Let me show you how it works on this simple example before we move into stock market data to apply COUNTIF for a simple analysis. Let me start by zooming in a little so we can see better what I'm doing. And now let me start with the simplest way you can access COUNTIF formula. So if you go again to formulas, more functions, statistical, and choose COUNTIF, this will bring us the formula wizard. This one has a much simpler syntax than VLOOKUP. We're going to need a range, for which if I select the arrow, I will only select values from column B, which is a country. And in my case, criteria will be in cell E5, which at the moment is Croatia. If I click OK to that, I'm going to see that Croatia appears twice. If I change that to Hungary, it's going to correctly answer that this is just once. However, it's worth noting here that this formula can also be used to check if the value does exist within a given range. So if I change that to France, I can tell that France doesn't appear in my table. That's very useful when you have a little bit longer list of countries or a little bit bigger data. Now let's use this simple example to demonstrate the second formula, which is COUNTIFs. COUNTIFs is exactly the same as COUNTIF, with the only difference being that you can use more than one column. In this example, I can only count how many times Croatia appears in the table. However, if I wanted to check how many times Croatia with the value 20 appears, I need to use COUNTIFs. Let's start by adding some values here. I'm going to type Croatia. And if I change to that cell and say 20, we're going to insert a formula here, once again using the formula wizard. So more functions, statistical, COUNTIFs. Now my criteria range for the first criteria is going to be the entire country column. Click back. And the criteria will be Croatia, which is manually typed in cell E5. Now, if you look at this wizard now, it automatically added the next step will be the second criteria range. I'm going to click on the arrow and select the value column, and criteria for this range being cell F5, where we have a manually typed in value. As you can see, it now adds the third range. It's going to add the fourth, fifth, and each time it adds a range, it will also ask for the criteria of this range, which means you could have many more columns to use the count function. For us, those two are sufficient, so I'm just going to click OK. As you can see, it does display correct value. If I change that to 10, it should still stay as 1. However, one neat trick to remember is that if I say that count how many times Croatia and the value greater than 5 appears, it is going to work, as this is going to pick up the correct criteria. Now let's try to get some real data and apply this knowledge. Let's imagine we have some money to invest in the stock market. I'm going to go to Yahoo Finance and from here find one of the indexes in UK, which is FTSE 250. Now Yahoo should give me the list of components for this index if I head on to components. And those are the 30 biggest companies from within the index. Now if I randomly choose a company from here, let's say First Group, Yahoo will give me its historical prices. So if I go to historical data, tweak the filters a little bit so we're seeing the maximum number of months available. I'll change that to max. If I click done, and then frequency, let's have it monthly, because otherwise this is going to be a big data for which we are not yet ready. I'm going to click apply, and then if I click download data, my browser will automatically save it in downloads and I can open it in Excel. Now in exported file we have dates along with some values. I don't want to go into details, but for our purposes we're going to use the adjusted closed column. I would like to mention at this point that this is not the best investing strategy, so I'm only using this data for formula demonstration purposes, and I guess it goes without saying that it doesn't guarantee historical returns will ever repeat. However, for our example, this is a great piece of data. Now let me once again start with zooming in. I'm holding Control and using the scroll wheel on my mouse to do that. Let's go back up. I'm going to need one more column to perform my analysis, and I'm going to call it profit. Now, in order for the formula I'm about to write here to work, I need to make sure that the data is sorted chronologically. I will use the date column, meaning I will just right click anywhere within column A, go to sort, and select oldest to newest. Now the first month is the very first value I have, so I can't really compare it to the previous month. I'm just going to type in false in here. For the second column, I'm going to write a simple formula. I'm going to say equals to adjusted close is greater than close a month before. Now what this formula does is checking if this value is greater than the value above, and since we sorted this chronologically, it means that value of the share this month is greater than the value of the share this month. If that's the case, I'm going to see true. If it's the other way around, as you can see, it's going to give me false. Now I need to populate the entire column, so I will double click in the lower right corner where you see this green square, and this way we could see the entire column being populated. Now with this extra column we can perform a simple analysis to check how many times the value of the share was higher on a month-to-month basis and how many times it was lower. I'm going to write two values, one would be profit and the second one loss. And I'm going to define profit as if the formula in column H returns true, meaning if the value of this month is greater than the value of that month, because that effectively would mean that we made profit. Going to start with equals to, instead of using wizard this time, and type in COUNTIF. Now, first value once again is going to be a range. I can select entire column here. In one of the videos I will explain why this is not a good practice, however for now we are absolutely okay to use it. And after comma I can say true. I'm going to do exactly the same for the loss. However, this time I'm looking for false. Now as you can see, it's going to tell me that 161 times the value of a month was higher than the value of the previous month, and only 130 times the value was lower. That looks like a good company to invest in on a month-to-month basis. However, once again, please note that this is just demonstration purposes. Now, if you still have a little bit of time, let me show you how you can combine this formula with the one we learned in my previous video, which is VLOOKUP, to prepare a little bit more complex analysis. I'm going to need two more columns, which I can achieve by right-clicking on column I and saying insert, and one more time insert here. As you can see, it's going to move my values to the right, giving me space for extra columns. And in the first column, I'm going to type in month ID. To populate this column, I'm going to use a very simple Excel formula, which is a month. This formula simply gives you a serial number of a month for a selected date. In our case, this date is stored in column A, so I'll click on that. And if I close the bracket, as you can see, this is 6 for June. If I once again double click on the small square, I will get the whole column populated. To show you it works, I will hit Control arrow down, and as you can see, the whole column is populated. Now the second column I'm going to add is called the month. This column will hold the month name. Let me zoom out a little bit to show you how we're going to populate that column. And I'll start by hitting 1 here and 2 here. If I select those two, once again using the square in the bottom right corner, if I click on it and drag it down holding my mouse key all the way up to 12, I'm going to get 12 months in a year. Now the corresponding month name would be January in this case, and if I use the same method, I can drag it down. Excel will cleverly fill it down. It's worth mentioning that this is pre-populated lists and you can control them, add them and modify them in options menu from the file. Here, I'm not going to do it now, not to make this video very long. Now, having done that, we will use a month column to write our VLOOKUP formula. Start typing VLOOKUP. Lookup value in our case will be cell I2. The range, I will explain in the next video why this is not the best idea. However, for now, I'll select entire 2 columns. This value, the column in our case will be second, and 0 as we explained in the previous video. If I drag it all down, as you can see, we have the whole column populated. I can press Ctrl down again to see if that's the case. Now let's try to identify which month is the best to buy a share of this company if you want to make profit. I'm going to slightly modify the table we have here. I will put some headings. So first one will be month serial or month ID in our case. Second one it will be month. Then we're going to say profit. And then we're going to say loss. Let's apply a very simple formatting. I will just add underline to distinguish headings from rest of the table. And we're going to use COUNTIFs formula to populate this table. Once again, I'm going to type in the formula opposed to using the formula wizard. So if I start typing COUNTIFs, and then in our case, criteria range 1 will be the month column, which is here. And our criteria will be this month. Criteria range 2 will be the profit column. And once again, for the profit, we're going to use true. I close the bracket, hit enter. And let's do the same for loss. COUNTIFs, criteria range 1 month, Q6, criteria range entire column H, and this time a false. I can select the two and populate it further. Now let's apply a very simple conditional formatting. So if I go to home, conditional formatting and data bars, maybe the green ones. And using this table, I can very quickly, if I zoom in, tell that the best month to invest in this company is August, meaning buying it end of June, beginning of July, and then selling beginning of August. Because historically, over 25 years, it only made a loss 5 times and it made profit 20 times. I'm talking, of course, about the share price. Now, this is the first of the range of aggregation formulas I'm hoping to soon introduce, which will allow us to build the first dashboard. Thank you all very much for watching, and for those of you who did, thank you very much for watching the previous video. Please hit subscribe to be up to date with my latest videos and get a notification each time they are added.